He was once hailed as an investment genius, a man whose reputation on Wall Street seemed untouchable. Yet behind that polished facade lay the mastermind of the largest financial fraud in history. This is the story of Bernie Madoff, the man who stole $65 billion. Bernie Madoff began his career on Wall Street in the early 1960s as a penny stock trader, launching his own firm with just $5,000 he had earned, working as a lifeguard and sprinkler installer, plus an additional $50,000 borrowed from his in-laws. Alongside his high school sweetheart, Ruth Alpern, and with critical early support from his father-in-law, accountant Saul Alpern, Madoff built a firm that would eventually become a major force in the securities industry. Initially, his firm operated as a market maker on the pink sheets, providing quoted bid and ask prices for over-the-counter stocks. Determined to compete with larger exchange-based firms, Madoff embraced innovative computer technology to disseminate quotes quickly and efficiently. This innovative approach, developed with his brother Peter, laid the foundation for the electronic trading systems that eventually helped shape the NASDAQ platform. At its peak, Madoff Securities was one of the largest market makers at NASDAQ, handling an average daily volume of trades worth hundreds of millions of dollars and accounting for a significant portion of the trading activity off the New York Stock Exchange. As described by Randall Smith of the Wall Street Journal in 1992, the $740 million average daily volume of trades executed electronically by the Madoff firm off the exchange equals 9% of the New York exchanges. Mr. Madoff's firm can execute trades so quickly and cheaply that it actually pays other brokerage firms a penny a share to execute their customers' orders, profiting from the spread between bid and asked prices that most stocks trade for. Madoff's influence extended well beyond his trading operations. In the early 1990s, he emerged as a prominent figure in the financial world, serving as chairman of the board of directors for the National Association of Securities Dealers and actively participating in other key industry organizations. At one point, his firm was responsible for processing an estimated 10 to 15% of the New York Stock Exchange's order flow, underscoring his role as a pioneer in the evolution of electronic trading. Yet, while Wall Street was dazzled by his technological savvy and revered status, hardly anyone noticed that behind the walls of the Madoff empire, something far more sinister was unfolding. Except for one man, Harry Markopolos. Harry Markopolos was a financial fraud investigator working at Rampart Investment Management. In 1999, his firm began to notice something peculiar. One of their partner hedge funds was consistently raking in profits of 1 to 2% every month. That's when whispers began circulating. This wasn't ordinary market performance. It turned out that the man behind these exceptional returns was none other than Bernie Madoff. Subsequently, Harry was tasked with the challenge of replicating Madoff's strategy for Rampart. But as he started dissecting the numbers, he immediately sensed something was off. In just 5 minutes of scrutinizing Madoff's revenue stream, it became glaringly apparent. His returns seemed too good to be true. Whether the market soared or plummeted, Madoff's profits remained eerily constant. Convinced that something was deeply wrong, Harry came out with two possibilities. Either Madoff was trading on privileged insider information, or he was orchestrating an enormous Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme is a type of scam where unsuspecting investors entrust their money to an operator, such as Madoff, who promises high returns. In reality, instead of generating profits through genuine investments, Madoff used money from new investors to pay off earlier ones, creating a convincing illusion of success. As more funds poured in, he maintained this facade, all while his investors remained unaware that they were financing a fraudulent scheme. How could such a massive fraud operate right under the noses of some of Wall Street's most brilliant minds? But that was Madoff's dark gift. He was an expert fabricator who artfully spun a narrative of success and trustworthiness. After all, who would dare question the man who was instrumental in building modern Wall Street? As Harry dove deeper into Madoff's strategy, he quickly uncovered mathematical inconsistencies. He found that the trades Madoff claimed would have required buying more options on the Chicago Board Options Exchange than were available. Moreover, even though Madoff reported trading around $6 billion, a volume 3 times larger than any known hedge fund, these trades did not influence the market as they should have. Public exchange records failed to confirm any of Madoff's transactions, and multiple equity firms remembered never seeing him execute any real trades. Based on these findings, Harry Markopolos concluded that Madoff might not have carried out any genuine trades for many years, possibly since the early 1990s. By 2000, armed with these glaring red flags, Harry took his concerns to the Securities and Exchange Commission, otherwise known as the SEC. However, Harry did not have any hard evidence, just theories and a trail of anomalies. As such, no investigation was launched. When later asked why so many on Wall Street remained silent, Harry famously remarked, "People in glass houses don't throw stones." Over the next few years, Harry's findings only grew more compelling. By 2005, he had unearthed even more discrepancies surrounding Madoff's operations. He produced a detailed 21-page memo titled, "The World's Largest Hedge Fund is a Fraud," which outlined 30 red flags that confirmed his belief that Madoff's consistently high returns could only be explained by a Ponzi scheme. This prompted the SEC to finally open an investigation in 2006. But Madoff's influence ran deep. He had built close ties with the SEC, even being called in for advice on occasion. In a stunning turn, the investigation was closed just 11 months later for lack of evidence, and not long after, Madoff boldly claimed, "In today's regulatory environment, it's virtually impossible to violate the rules." However, Madoff at this time must have known that it was only a matter of time before the hypocrisy in his words would be revealed. Ironically, it wasn't the SEC or Harry Markopolos who ultimately exposed him. Larger forces were at work. In September 2008, Wall Street was engulfed in flames from the global financial crisis and the collapse of the Lehman Brothers. The stock market was in free fall, plunging to unprecedented lows that no one had ever imagined. With no new money flowing into his scheme, clients began demanding their original investments back. Bernie Madoff knew his empire was crumbling and that the end was near. By November 2008, with only $300 million coming in against $320 million withdrawn, Madoff's Chase Manhattan bank account had plummeted from over $5 billion to a mere $234 million. Desperately trying to keep his scheme afloat, he moved funds from his London office and received large cash injections from longtime supporters Carl J. Shapiro and Martin Rosenman. But these efforts weren't enough to cover the growing withdrawals. Left with no options, Madoff didn't run. He simply knew the game was over. He confessed to his sons, Mark and Andrew, leaving them stunned to discover that their father had been orchestrating a massive Ponzi scheme. In the moment of raw revelation, Madoff also disclosed his plan to announce a $200 million bonus for his staff 2 months ahead of schedule in a desperate attempt to keep his failing operation afloat. Determined not to be complicit in their father's fraud, Mark and Andrew immediately consulted lawyers and alerted the authorities about the entire Ponzi scheme. On December 11, 2008, Bernie Madoff was arrested at his home and later released on strict house arrest. As the crisis deepened and Christmas Eve arrived, Madoff and his wife Ruth were forced to confront the harsh reality that the colossal enterprise they had once built was now in ruins. In an attempt to numb their pain, they turned to prescription drugs, only to discover by Christmas Day that there was no way out of the looming disaster. The facade of $65 billion in investments have been completely shattered, erasing fortunes that spanned from billionaire portfolios to everyday pension funds. In June 2009, at the age of 71, Madoff admitted his crimes without offering any excuses and was sentenced to 150 years in prison, bringing his long reign of fraud to a dramatic end. Meanwhile, tragedy continued to haunt his family. Mark took his own life in the wake of the scandal. Andrew succumbed to cancer, and Ruth has long since cut off all communication with him. Even with a daily 15-minute phone call allowance, Bernie remains isolated, confessing he has no one to speak to. Madoff remained at the Butner Federal Correctional Institution in North Carolina until he died in the prison hospital on April 14, 2021. The bitter moral of this story is clear. Letting greed rule your life comes at an unimaginable cost. It's simply not worth it.